So welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about a very important pattern, and that's a singleton. Before I jump into programming, I want to actually explain what it does, and that's quite important. The very next thing we want to do is we want to write a new class or a new method basically, or a new class method that basically is going to prepare our very first list. Now, the two different ways. One of them is you could actually program this method in here in app data and just give it some dummy values and make a new list and add it to the current list. Or we could do it basically in a separate file or a separate class. And that's what is the recommended way, simply because we don't want to, overcrowd any of our files. We don't want to have hundreds of different, methods or hundreds of lines of codes in just a single file. Because of that, I need to have a system in place that I can share the information in this particular class, app data, with other classes. And sharing these values, such as the current user or a current list, and as long as I want to share only one instance of it, requires something called a singleton. And what singleton does for us is essentially maintains only one instance of, let's say, current user or current list throughout the entire application. So every time that we call the singleton and we ask for an instance of it, it basically goes to the same instance. It doesn't essentially reallocate anything. It doesn't reallocate a new user or a new list. And that's quite useful. So let's see how we're going to do that. I'm going to come to my appdata.h, and down here I'm going to add a new method. You can call it pretty much anything. From my experience, most people call it shared manager. So basically this is a class method. It's got a plus sign on it. It doesn't run on instances of the class. It doesn't run on objects. It runs on the class itself. And it's called shared manager. So let's see what my shared manager essentially is going to do for me. So let's go to our app data. After my init, I'm going to say my shared manager does these things. First of all, it has a static app data, and let's call it shared manager equal nil. And then what it's going to do is it's going to say shared manager equals self alloc and init. So essentially it makes another copy of app data and returns that to me and maintains all of my values. It makes the same instance of it. This code could very well work, but there is a little issue with this, and that is something about the threading. If multiple different users or different parts of your code try to access this, there's going to be basically a race between them, and that's really another good thing. So for that, we try to dispatch this, and for the dispatch, I'm going to say static dispatch once. I'm going to say, let's call it once token. That's a pretty common name that everyone, comes up with. And I'm going to say dispatch once. And what I want to dispatch once is my dispatch token, whatever is the name of it, which is called once token. And I want to have a handle in it or completion in it, which is this piece of code, shared manager. And that's about that. So basically, one more time, what's happening is we are basically accessing the same copy of the shared manager, and we're calling it through a queue to make sure if there are multiple threads accessing that, none of them tries to access at the same time. And of course, we return that class as a whole. So the good news is, even though this is a bit of a complex topic, and I really recommend that you guys, read a little bit more about singletons and the reason we use singleton patterns. The good news is this is just a one-off thing. This is actually the only time I think throughout this application we will be using a singleton, and that's pretty much it. That's all we have to know, and that's all we have to do for it. So let's keep it up to here. In the next lesson, we will see why we did this and how we can use it.